Every time I think I'm out, it pulls me back in. The Witcher 3 is like a warm blanket to me. It's no secret that The Witcher 3 is one of the most acclaimed and hyped games of all time. It's the 9th best-selling game ever, with over 50 million copies sold. It raked in hundreds of Game of the Year nominations and wins in 2015, and to this day, it's still celebrated as one of, if not the best, RPGs of all time. Thus, with such adulation comes heavy skepticism from dissenters. I've seen a lot of comments on various social media platforms from people saying they just didn't get the hype for this game, or that when they tried it, they found it boring, broken, or otherwise overrated. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this game is perfect or anything. Yeah, it launched with more bugs than you can find on your windshield after a 12-hour drive. Yeah, the combat isn't revolutionary and can feel really wonky at times. Yeah, Roach Corner's about as well as a oil tanker. And I'm just as annoyed as everyone else when Geralt decides to play with the damn candle when I want him to interact with something else. But the faults that this game may have in no way overshadow its merits, and I, for one, absolutely love it. First of all, this world is absolutely breathtaking. From the snow-capped Nordic Isles of Skellige to the bustling, breathing city of Novigrad, the level of detail that the developers poured into these environments is still impressive, even by today's standards. Novigrad feels like a living city. The diversity within the crowds at Town Square, the winding and narrow streets, and the faithful recreation of actual architecture from real Polish cities always instill a reverence in me for the time it must have taken for these devs to create it. It's rich and dense, not unlike a Costco ice cream cake, and similarly, always a treat. Take a boat with me now to the Isles of Skellige, where badass Vikings roam. On Ardskellig, we have a winding mountain pass that leads to the great keep at Cair Trolde, a great fortress built into the mountain overlooking the harbor. Riding Roach uphill through the winding tunnels, the clippity-clop of her hooves on the cobblestone never fails to remind me of Gandalf riding up the streets of Minas Tirith. The castle itself, embracing the natural fortification of the mountain upon which it is built, is likewise reminiscent of the Great Helm's Deep. It's an epic castle, and I won't apologize for loving it. But my favorite location within the game is far and away Velen. The stinking and treacherous swamps, the dense forests, the way that the wind rustles through the brush and the trees, and the incredible vibrancy of the lighting during sunrise and sunset, along with the mournful sound of the music. I just love it. Journeying through Velen always leaves me with a sense that we really are traveling through a dangerous high fantasy shithole, rife with danger, but also with strange beauty. Andrzej Sapkowski created some of the most layered and interesting characters in the Witcher books. Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer in particular are given so much to do and say throughout that series that by the end of Lady of the Lake, the reader really understands them inside and out. Their beliefs, their ethics, and most importantly, what they hold dear. It's awesome, therefore, that CD Projekt Red have been able to enhance and expand the personality of this great triplet within the games. But it's massively impressive to me that they've been able to write the side characters within this game to be almost as interesting and layered as the main triad itself. The Bloody Baron is an obvious example that's been covered ad nauseum by pretty much every YouTube channel that's ever made a Witcher video. I agree with it, but I'm going to leave it out for the sake of diversity. I particularly enjoyed developing/observing Geralt's relationship with characters like Zoltan, Lambert, Dijkstra, Krakon Crate, Vernon Roach, who is an original CDPR character by the way, Cirrus, Hjalmar, Emperor Emir, Dandelion, and the list goes on and on and on. What I'm getting at is the effort CDPR underwent with the character writing is tremendous. The dialogues and storylines feel very faithful to the blueprint laid out for the classic book characters, and what new stuff the game does introduce is often just as good. There are also really awesome moments between Yennefer and Geralt, Yennefer and Ciri, and especially Geralt and Ciri. The main theme within the original Witcher stories was family, more specifically, adopted family, or the family you choose. And the game goes out of its way, time after time, to be faithful to that main theme. This is the first example where we will see how the RPG format is the perfect format through which to experience this world. The idea of destiny bringing these three together is a major sub-theme within the books, but the books also went out of their way to express that destiny by itself is not enough. The three must choose to live for each other in order to be a family. This game gives you so many moments to do just that. Choose to be a family, or to completely it up. Sapkowski's insistence on choice as it pertains to family is religiously adhered to in this game, and it's awesome, providing the player with some opportunity for truly heartwarming moments, particularly between the Witcher and his adopted daughter. The game also faithfully maintains the source material's proclivity towards moral gray areas within its harsh world. This theme means that choices are almost never totally straightforward, and that's perfect for the cause and effect backbone that needs to be in place in a role-playing game. In short, choices matter in The Witcher 3. When I was first presented with the choice to free the spirit trapped within the Whispering Hillock during my very first playthrough, for example, I was sure that the right choice was to free it to save the children. The spirit claimed that the children would be eaten by the crones back at Crookback Bog if I did not free it, and saving children should always be a high priority on any Witcher's list, right? I didn't stop to think about the fact that whatever was trapped in this tree was obviously malicious and ancient, and it could be attempting to manipulate me in order to set me free. It could be totally lying about those kids. I certainly didn't expect that once freed, it would massacre the entire village of Downwarren and leave me with an annoying amount of wraiths to fight every time I would subsequently pass through the area. But the inverse choice also failed to yield a perfect outcome. We come to learn later in the game that the crones request that 3 children be sent to meet them under the mountain every year on the Sabbath. The villagers believe that the children are set free afterwards, and after having their minds enlightened by the experience, always choose to travel the world, having been granted such a blessing of visiting the ladies of the wood. But that's not exactly what happens, and I think the villagers probably know deep down that something is off with this whole arrangement. Let's just say that instead of finding nirvana, the victims find themselves in hot water. The fates of these children is obviously horrifying and wrong, but it turns out that the crones bless the rest of the surrounding area as a reward for the dedication shown to them on the Sabbath. The villages surrounding Crookback Bog are prospered and looked after unlike any other area in Velen. It goes without saying then that when we kill 2 of the crones and force the 3rd to flee, the villagers are confronted with living in an extremely dangerous world without the supernatural aid to which they had grown accustomed. It seemed at first that killing those nasty, fugly pieces of human-eating shit was a good thing, but have we actually doomed more people than we saved? What seemed like a slam dunk at first actually has some drawbacks. It's a gray world, and representative of the complexity we may face when making decisions in our real lives. The Witcher 3 is full of moments like this. Choices or scripted plot events that may seem obvious usually prove themselves to be much more complicated. You'll also be presented with choices that are difficult right off the bat, their complexity obvious at face value. When an RPG is written with such thought, it leaves the player feeling like what they do really is shaping the world in big and small ways. You might say, but this high-quality writing is to be expected for the main quests, especially when the game comes from a resource-rich studio like CD Projekt Red. True enough, but what I think many of us were floored by when this game came out was the care and attention put into most of this game's optional content as well. Witcher contracts and side quests in general often either offer a difficult choice or an interesting piece of storytelling that transforms the game's quote-unquote filler content into something more. The player engagement will obviously range depending on what affects you the most, but I was at the very least entertained by 90% of this game's so-called side content. At times, finding myself thinking really hard about the ethical implications of what I was about to choose. When a video game can do that, it has succeeded at immersing the player. The random encounters in this world are also some of the best I've ever experienced in a video game. The world of The Witcher has always placed a heavy influence on tolerance, or the lack thereof, and the poisonous effects of xenophobia. It's a major theme throughout the books that elves and humans are less than simpatico with each other, and The Witcher 3 follows in this vein to great effect. As I was strolling my Witcher ass through Velen one morning, I happened upon a burning house with a bunch of Redanian soldiers standing outside. Cries from inside the house led me to deduce brilliantly that these guys were burning someone alive, and shortly after whipping their asses and blasting down the door, an elf emerges. Encounters like this are not uncommon at all. The elf informs us that when she refused to give the soldiers her valuables, they decided to turn her house into a wood oven with her inside it. Rather than telling us that humans have issues with elves and elves have issues with humans, we get to see and play through the chaos, or not, as we see fit. Skirmishes like this pop up throughout the game, and we as players cannot help but come to understand the strained and violent world with which we are interacting. Show, don't tell. The game doesn't skimp on epic moments either. There's a cinematic flair to these cutscenes that really works. From Lambert, Geralt, and Letho facing down a small army by themselves, to Eskel taking on a bitch-ass wizard, to Ciri and Geralt's revenge hunt of Imlerith that culminates in this absolutely brutal kill. The game is quite simply epic. But in the end, the best part of this game is simply living like a Witcher. It's so fun riding Roach into a town and approaching a notice board full of issues these townspeople are facing. Each notice and note we find in this world is written with purpose and intent, and often a unique personality. Little touches like this are what really sell the illusion of this being a lived-in world. Next, we must contact the contract owner, at which point we are usually given a few more details and the personal context they have for writing the posted notice in the first place. Almost none of these feel like they were written cynically to pad out the game time, again enhancing the player's immersion. After haggling the near impoverished villager to the point of exasperation, we set off on the trail to hunt down the monster. We find clues, inspect dead bodies, follow blood trails, and deduce eventually what we are hunting and when and where we can strike. This is the part of the video where I'm going to put on my monocle of gamer superiority and tell you all that the only true and righteous way to play this game is on Death March difficulty. It's punishingly hard, but there's a purpose for this. I really wish that they'd called this Witcher difficulty, because that's exactly what it forces the player to do. Play like a Witcher. You will need to read the bestiary entries and prepare for each fight, especially if you are underleveled. Blade oils, bombs, potions, decoctions, weapon and armor maintenance, specific signs and fighting styles go from frivolous details to crucial cornerstones of your strategy for each contract in Death March difficulty. On the lower difficulties, it's just so easy to thoughtlessly mash a few buttons to defeat each monster, and the only thing that really changes from fight to fight is the creature you're up against. Please, please, please give this a try on the hardest difficulty. It will force you to learn each of the game's systems, and this is exactly how you can roleplay being a Witcher with the greatest degree of accuracy. All of that being said, games are meant to be fun, so if you're having fun on a lower difficulty, have at it. But if you found the gameplay to be stale, please give this another try on the highest difficulty. I think you'll find it much more engaging as you learn and are forced to learn, really, each of the game's systems. The combat is also fluid and well animated enough, at least in my opinion, to be really enjoyable for the most part. On Death March, it's challenging and feels almost Souls-like, as you will need to move the way Witchers do, agile and purposeful, always waiting for your perfect opening. There are also a myriad of possibilities when it comes to build options. There are so many skills and ability enhancements, swords and armor sets, mutagens, and they all interact with each other in unique ways, offering the player plenty of incentive to just do a few more contracts to unlock that last ability point, or earn that last bit of coin so you can craft the breastplate or sword that will change everything. It's a gameplay loop that's really fun, engaging, and downright addictive. Speaking of addictive,
ever play Gwent?
I avoided Gwent like a plague my first playthrough because I typically can't stand minigames within video games. But on my second playthrough, I decided to give it a fair shot, and after a while, I was hooked. It's simple, but it's really fun, and you simply must not look it over. The Witcher 3 offers something that many games strive for, but few can ever really achieve: richness. It's rich in its vibrant and beautiful world. It's rich in its characterization and writing. It's rich in its combat, more specifically, in its systems that allow you to craft Geralt into the Witcher of your dreams. It's rich in its deep well of quality content and its ability to pull you in for hours at a time. In short, it's rich in its immersion. And the only thing left to say is that The Witcher 3 is in fact not overrated. In fact, it kicks major ass.